Hi everyone, this is Sahil, and today we saw how the Indian team managed to reserve a spot in the finals in both the open section as well as the women's section. They had resounding victories by crushing their opponents in both sections, and it was a great treat to watch live. These were rapid games, and even then, the quality of play was very high, and India did manage to qualify for the finals, which will happen tomorrow. But today's games were very interesting, at least personally for me. I learned a lot from them and I have analyzed them for you a little bit. And I think each of the players is going to teach us a lesson today and we're going to look at them one by one. So, first, we're going to look at Nihal's game and how he utilized the center to gain a significant advantage and win the game. And we're going to look at it right now. So Nihal drew his first round game very quickly. It was an opposite color bishop endgame, and he drew with black, and that was decent for India. And India went on to win 2.5, 1.5. In the second round, he had the white pieces, and he played a very unorthodox opening, which I personally have played quite often. Knight f3, knight f6, d4, g6, and here he played knight c3. Now, if black were to go bishop g7, then this would transpose into some sort of Pierce opening. So black here played d5 and now bishop f4. Now this is known as the Jubava system sometimes, but usually in that case the pawn is not on g6. But this is a very unorthodox way to play because ideally usually white would like to play c4 and he has blocked his c pawn by placing the knight on c3. But this also has some clever ideas we'll see in the game. So bishop g7, knight b5. Now this is one of the ideas. This looks very amateurish, but it has a very clever idea that now c7 cannot be protected. There's only one way to do so, and that is knight a6. And after e3, castles, h3, saving the bishop from any threats like knight h5, and c5. So now if you compare these two knights, you can see already that the knight on b5 is stronger, is an attacking piece, and the knight on a6 is a defensive piece. And where can you move the knight on a6 to? There is no square to move it to, and that's why in this position white is slightly better. c3, queen b6, a4, protecting the knight, c4, b3, takes, queen a5, bishop e2, bishop f5, castles, rook c8, rook c1. So black here plays bishop e6. He wants to prevent white from going c4 or e4. And after knight g5, bishop d7, you can see how after bishop e5, kind of countering this bishop on g7, white has aligned his pieces perfectly. And after bishop to c6, he manages to play c4. So this is a very important element. So right now you can see white has 2 pawns in the central files, black has 2. And after playing c4, white has exchanged one of his c pawns with one of the central pawns. So after queen d8, rook c2, h6, knight f3, takes and takes, you can see how white has 2 pawns in the central files and now black only has 1. And this is how white will use the central advantage. For now, black controls these 2 squares, the d5 and the e4 squares, so it's fine. However, if this control is lost in the future, white will simply push his central pawns, and the pawns in the center have a huge influence as compared to pawns on the wings. And this is a very important element, so that's why you have to always play in the center. And that's why this extra pawn on the queen side, it's not having much influence over the game. If there was some end game and you could maybe push these pawns somewhere here, they would have some significant influence. But as of now, the central pawns are the important ones. So now bishop d5, rook c1. So white prepares to take control of the c file by doubling rooks. Rook c4, bishop takes, rook takes, knight d7, and the bishops are exchanged. And now finally e4. You can see white has managed to push both his pawns, and that's why it's very difficult for black to play, because I'm going to flip the board so that you can understand now. If you're playing this position as black, you can see how cramped your pieces are. You cannot play any move without any issues. White also controls the c file, and you cannot even play rook c8 because the a7 pawn can be hanging, and your knight on a6, which looked very normal during the opening, it's absolutely foolish right now. You cannot even bring it into play, and your king is alone on the king side. If you cut a line across here, you see black has no pieces supporting the king, so you know pretty much where white has to attack. and white managed to do that perfectly. After all, this is Nihal Sarin we are talking about. So queen b6, queen c3, setting up this deadly threat. Queen f6, a5, queen f4, d5, check, king h7 and g3, queen f6, and now e5. And now you see these pawns are going further and further up the board, and black's pieces are just ridiculous, sitting here doing absolutely nothing. The queen goes to f5, king g2, just a solid move, kind of shoring up these two weak points. Knight f8, rook f4, and now you see how black's position is falling apart. The f7 pawn is falling, and he tried some tactical sequence, but it's not going to work. Rook c8, just rook takes f5, rook takes c3, rook takes f7, king g8, and you can even pause the video and try to find the winning move for white here. Black resigned after Nihal's next move, which is very easy. You can pause the video right now and try to find it, guys. So here Nihal played rook takes f8, which basically captures the knight for free, because black has to capture this, and then white will just capture the rook and he'll be a piece up with the dominating center still present, and this is just completely lost for black, and that's why black resigned. And this was a lesson in the advantage which the center provides to you if you take it. If you place your pawns in the center, if you place your pieces in the center, and the pieces on the side of the board, the knight that was played to a6 on move number 5 or 4 is still on a6, and it never came into play. Meanwhile, these two knights have created such strong influence over the entire board, and they have caused a lot of trouble to black. So this was a marvelous lesson by Nihal Sarin in the element of the advantage of the center. So I hope you learned something from this, guys.